Why are there ridges on Reese's peanut butter cups? Probably so they never slip from her hands. Could you imagine? I'd lose it. Luckily, Reese's thought about that. Wonder what else they think about. Probably chocolate and peanut butter.
Guys, what's good? Welcome to the Bird Brain Podcast, where the goal is to rise above it all, stay elevated, create that infinity, and up your you. I literally almost forgot. I'm your host, Isaiah, and today is going to get interesting because I'm going to talk about the concept of abundance and how abundance shows up in the moments of scarcity. And I might get a little spiritual with you, touch on intuition, but just things outside of your tangibility that could potentially be pointing you to what it is that you want. So we're going to get into that. If you are driving, put on your damn seatbelt and go along for the ride. If you're at home, just take a breather, find somewhere comfortable, get some water, and we're going to have this chat. All right, stay tuned. Guys, what's going on? How are you? How are you feeling? Honestly, genuinely, how are you doing? Where's your heart at? How's your headspace? Your boy has been journeying through some storms. And there's been a lot going on, and at the same time very little happening, if that makes sense. And for me personally, I like to look at patterns in my life, in certain point in times in the year, all these things. I just like to take stock in, especially as my birthday creeps up. It's always a moment of, reflection and reconfiguration, but also just drive, forward. And you hear the abundance mindset talk a lot, like the abundance rhetoric and all these things. It's just like, think positive, think that you already have things and, they'll be there. And it's frustrating sometimes because it's daunting, right? It feels as if I'm not thinking right, or, I've never had this thing, so how the hell can it be real? Or do I even deserve this? Whatever it is I'm asking for. No, I'm not one of the lucky ones. I'm not one of the desirables to have these things and rinse, wash, repeat, whatever comes up in your head. Those are the things that come up for me sometimes. And I've accepted that I'm a very hard worker. I've accepted that. And it's not in competition with anyone else. It's just like what I know that I do on a daily basis, or just what I've worked to earn in life. I work very hard. And despite what I may be going through, I do try to take breaks and recalibrate. But overall, it's like I'm going to work for my shit because I want better for myself. And, if I have better for myself, then I can offer better to others, right? And, when we talk about the abundance mindset, a lot of times we can get caught up in this desperation of, well, I don't have, I hope to have, or, I need this to have this, and so on and so forth, like scarcity thinking, right? But I want to kind of turn that on its head a little bit and just give you guys a little anecdote. So, how do I start this? So as let's use any relationship, because this has happened in friendship, this has happened in family, this has happened in business, this has happened in romantic relationships. Whenever we feel or whenever we notice that someone is not doing certain things, or the bare minimum feels like you're asking a lot, you start to think that you are not enough to receive these things from these people. But what if, let's say you are seeking abundance, right? You are seeking improved relationships. You're seeking, better financial stability, all these things. You are seeking more. And where you currently are is not giving that. So immediately you kind of default to, well, I guess I'm not enough, right? Or maybe I'm asking for too much. But I thought about it last week after I had a conversation with a business partner. We use business partner. And for a while, there's been this nagging feeling, and whenever I have a nagging feeling, or there's this weird kind of like how do I like to think of it? In my head, it's just like it's almost like whack-a-mole. You push it down, or Jack in the Box. You push it down and it keeps popping up. You push it down, it keeps popping up, and it's like for the life of you, you can't seem to keep it down in the box. That's when some thoughts for me pop up in my head like that. If it's about something important, if it's about a person, it always happens. Even if if I notice when there are people that I'm close with, they're going through some things, they kind of pop up in my head. They're like a Jack in the Box. And this happened with this particular relationship. I just felt as if they hadn't been trying. They hadn't been really advocating for me. And I had no real evidence. Like, they didn't say, hey, I haven't been advocating for you. Just letting you know. It was subtle things. It was subtle things. And I watched other people that they were in connection with, how they were showing up for them and doing what they were supposed to be doing by contract. But when it came to me, it just seemed like it was always radio silence, or I can't do this, or there's this level of like uncertainty or helplessness that they had when it came to showing up for me. This has also happened in a friendship, a relationship, and family, where I've observed people doing the very things that I asked for, them doing for other people without them having to ask. And that kills you sometimes, because it's such a sting, right? It's like, okay, well, I guess there's something wrong with me that you don't feel like you want to make effort for me. Maybe it's like you don't like me, or maybe it's something, or maybe it's this, or whatever the case may be. It all kind of falls back on your shoulders. So anyway, I even had a dream about this person where it was like they were literally talking shit about me in my dream. And it woke me up out of my sleep. It was that like alarming of a dream that it woke me out of my sleep. And when it did, when I had that dream, I was like, yep, this is confirmation that they're not being honest about who they are or how they've been showing up. So last week I decided to, contact them and say, hey, can you just send me a kind of like documentation or a report of what's been done so far? And I wasn't being accusatory or anything like that. It wasn't like trying to blame them and call them out and be like, hey, you're not doing your job. It's like, okay, Isaiah, there's a feeling that you have. There's a level of uncertainty you have. Let's see if we could get confirmation, either to reflect or reject what your feelings are. So sent the email. And they got back to me right away. And they didn't just send the email, they also called me. And immediately when they called me, they were like, hey, so I don't think, this connection's working. Maybe you should find someone else. And the entire time, you know, in the past, I've tried to fight to keep people in my life. And that in itself was an indication that the other person didn't want to be in my life, or they didn't want to make the effort that I required to be present. So they were kind of like just throwing in a towel or trying to find a way to make it like, oh, maybe you should just find someone else, or I'm not the person for you. Da, da, da. And all of that is saying that, hey, what you require, I don't offer for you. And so they called and we had the conversation. I was like, so what have you noticed on your end that I'm not doing? I was like, what's your take? Because for me, I just started listing off things. I was like, in terms of what I've accomplished so far, like I'm featured in magazines. My podcast has grown tremendously thanks to you guys. I have a published book. I'm a published author, and my social media is almost at 100,000 followers. On top of that, my acting credits are there. Like, I'm not somebody sitting around waiting for life to happen. I'm doing my best to make life happen for me. So what do you think is off? Like, and I know I'm not shit when it's all said and done. Again, I work very hard, so I know at this point I'm not mediocre and I'm not shit. Like, I don't produce anything that's lackluster. So what do you think it is on your end? They didn't have an answer. And they're like, oh, well, it could be this or and it wasn't really anything to point to. Like, if there's something wrong, if there's something wrong with the other person, I should say, you would have some kind of trajectory, in my opinion. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings. It's like, look, if I'm going to get better, I need fucking trajectory on what I need to get better on. But they couldn't give it to me. And the more I talked, it was like, oh, well, maybe I won't take it personal. You can find someone else, so on and so forth. Like, really throwing in a towel off the bat. And I was like, okay, cool. And I told him, I was like, look, here's the deal. For me, it's like my connections are investments. I don't have wandering eyes. I'm not the type of person that's always looking for the next best thing. It's like, whoever I'm rocking with you. And some way in shape or form, we're going to get to where we need to be. I'm pulling you up. You're pulling me up. We're looking out for each other. That's how I move through life. But I've realized, and my mom keeps saying this to me, stop expecting you from people, because the truth of the matter is there are people who've been through less. There are people who've had to work less and have received a lot more. So therefore, their work ethic is not there, and they will seek the path of least resistance. Okay? I'll try to repeat that as best as I can. There are some people that are not used to hard work. There are some people who don't have the same work ethic. So therefore, they will not know how to work for you. They will seek the path of least resistance, aka somebody who offers them a lot more without them having to do a lot at all. And what I've realized in a lot of my relationships, I realized the fact that I do my best to be very self-sufficient, people feel okay being lazy in my life. Why? And I have a tendency to overlook it because I'm already trying to work and do my best to make sure that I'm not slacking off or half-assing on my end. So I'm like, all right, I got to step my shit up. I got to make sure I'm coming 100% correct, because nobody wants to deal with a lazy person. And that's my method of thinking. No one wants to deal with a lazy ass person. So Isaiah, you got to be on your shit. Dot your I's, cross your T's, be on it. But what I failed to realize is a lot of people talk a good game about how hard they work, and they don't do shit. They don't do shit. And it's not personal or whatever the case may be. It just is. And sometimes if you were used to hustling and you have the capacity, or you make the capacity to make shit happen, you are oftentimes in the company of people who see that, and they don't necessarily value it. They use it to their advantage to not have to work more. It's kind of like the lazy coworker, right? They always put their work off on somebody else. Sometimes that happens and that shows up in your relationships. Okay. And it doesn't matter if they're friend, family, coworker, romantic partner, whatever the case may be. Sometimes it shows up in those relationships too. So the more she talked, or the more we had the conversation, the more I understood she wasn't doing anything for a while. And the reason I knew that is because I would ask questions. Whenever I go into a situation, the goal is to see clarity. The goal is to not be right. The goal is to see clarity, because I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm okay with that. I'll own my shit if it's something that I'm doing is something that I'm wrong about. And there was nothing that she could point to that said, hey, Isaiah, you were not doing enough. And at the same time, she wasn't going to admit that she wasn't doing enough. But I noticed it. Sometimes the thing about abundance is when we seek abundance, the relationships, the connections, the environments that are not providing abundance will become very conflicting. And instead of you starting to worry and feeling like, oh man, I'm not enough, understand that abundance is saying that, hey, this is not where I am. You're not meant to stop here. This is not where the seeds grow any longer. Yes, maybe we tried to plant here, but this is not where you grow. This is not where you grow. And when you are seeking abundance, you have to let go of the little things in the little relationships or the people making little effort in your life so you can receive the abundance that you deserve, especially if you work your ass off. Now, I'm not saying I will never have it in me to tell somebody I'm the hardest working person in the world, because there's a lot more I could be doing, but there's a lot that I already do. And sometimes for some reason, the people that are half-assing us in our lives, we use that as a barometer of what we are worth, but also how much we work. And that's not the case. That is not the case. I even had a friendship last year. And again, that feeling, trust your gut. First of all, if you ask for something, understand that God, whatever you believe in, life is not conspiring against you. Your goal is to not fight life. Your goal is to embrace it, right? Life is not conspiring against you. If anything, it's trying to point you in the direction of what you're seeking. Yes, it may be hard work and it may be scary and daunting, but the truth of the matter is, whenever you are existing in a relationship that is not pouring into you the way you deserve to be poured into, that is life saying that, hey, this is not where you belong. I'm just letting you know, putting you on notice. This is not where you grow anymore, right? This is not for you. Maybe there were some things that you needed from this, but this is not for you, right? And it doesn't need to be you condemning the other person or degrading them, whatever. The fact of the matter is this, when someone shows you that they are not willing to pour into you, that is not indication that you need to pour more into them. You can't pour a gallon into a cup, okay? You can't pour a gallon into a cap, like Miss Amber Kinney says. Shout out. You move. You find somewhere where you belong, and you find spaces that exist to pour into you and that you pour into properly, right? It's not necessarily about quid pro quo, but sometimes it's about understanding what relationships in your life are making a point to be present. Okay? I try my best to not take any days off in terms of my productivity, but also my presence in other people's lives. And I could be going through the worst shit, and I'm still going to do my best to show up. It may not be the 100%, but I'm going to do my best to show up and look out for people. Why? Because I've understood through life how hard it has been to have people do for you without you having to remind them or without you feeling like you're pulling their fucking teeth. So sometimes abundance looks like scarcity. Sometimes abundance looks like scarcity. In a way, it kind of presents itself as it creates friction. Or it not creates friction. Friction exists. and you feel like you're asking a lot. Like I said, there was a connection of mine last year, and it didn't matter. Everything I asked felt like a mountain, right? Everything I asked, and it was small things because it was shit that I ended up doing on my own anyway. But everything I asked of this person felt like a lot, like they had to journey through quicksand to make it happen. But they were easily doing it for other people, people that were doing less for them. They had no problem doing it. And I was like, well, maybe it's me. It's something about me. And it can be you and not you at the same time, right? When you say don't take things personal, it means that don't take people's personal belongings with you. Let people do what they do. Sometimes you just have to find your belongings, pick up your shit, and leave. Okay? That's how we're looking at abundance now. When things seem to be withering away or deconstructing or deteriorating, even your relationships, that's indication that abundance is not there. Sometimes we outgrow where we're planted or where other people think we should be planted. And no one's never really going to admit that they're half-assing you because that makes them look bad. No one wants to be seen as a bad guy, right? They don't care to be a half-assed person, but they don't want to be labeled as that. No one wants to be labeled as that, but they will always show you exactly what they think of you. And like I was talking to my sister, she was like, yeah, they probably felt some type of way that you were doing all this stuff without them. And my thing is this, is like, I'm doing these things so we can have something to build upon. I'm working so the workload can be a lot easier for both of us. Making it easier. Or she didn't, my sister was like, yeah, she didn't know about it or felt as if, you weren't doing enough for her in the moment. So like, she probably felt as though you weren't benefiting her. So she stopped trying or didn't try at all. I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. But I didn't charge that to my lack of. I didn't charge that to what I have created or what I've made for myself. I let it be this. Sometimes abundance shows up in scarcity. Abundance shows up in the lack of effort from others. And when you notice that, when someone shows you that they are not willing to show up in the relationship, you leave them alone. You do not work harder. You do not work harder. Let people show you where they want to be in your life and you go from there. Don't try to force people in any spaces that they don't belong in. And when it comes to abundance, understand that abundance doesn't deserve to be forced or squeezed into tiny spaces just because there are people taking up a lot of room in the wrong room in your life. Make room for what you ask for. Abundance requires space. Abundance requires a lot of space. That's what abundance is. It's quantity and quality. It needs space to be present. And if you are ushering in abundance, you have to make sure you welcome in abundance the way it deserves to be welcomed in. That's just something to think about. Whoever it is out there, it feels like you are pulling teeth to just get scraps from somebody. They're showing you that they don't value enough to make more effort. And they may do those things for somebody else. That's fine. That's fine. But like I said, if you work your ass off, you are doing nothing wrong. You were doing absolutely nothing wrong. All right. That's the downside of being so self-sufficient and hyper independent. Sometimes people see that and they're like, well, I don't need to do much because they're going to do it anyway. I don't like it. It's not that much of a priority. And sometimes they feel some type of way that you're doing so much without them. Well, that's your fault because I gave you space. I put you in the front seat of my journey with me and you decided you didn't want to do anything. You didn't even want to look at the map for me. When people show you that they are not willing to show up or they're not willing to make any effort, don't fight to keep them in your life. Let them go. Make room for somebody that's going to show up without you necessarily having to ask. Okay? Abundance shows up in scarcity. So when things feel like they're falling by the wayside or transitioning or relationships are getting funny or whatever, that's not where your abundance is. Okay? Clean your plate so you can make room for dessert. Clear people out. Because there's no reason to keep someone around just for the sake of them holding space. You know, one of my mom, again, this is how I was raised. She always said, if you're ever, don't stand around doing nothing. And I try to apply that to life and my relationships. If I'm in your life, I'm proactive. I do my best to be proactive. There's no reason I should be watching you bust your ass and not offer some kind of help. There's no reason that you should be going through things. I'm in your life and you're going through things alone. That's my trajectory. But what I understand is not everybody else thinks or moves that way. And that's okay, because there are other people out there. I'm no exception, right? I'm not that unique. And I remind myself of that. It's just sometimes we are used to being in relationships of scarcity because we are willing to do so much in our relationships. Stop doing that. Keep doing you, but make sure the people that you have around you are actually doing for you too, like you're willing to do for them. Let other people go. Let other people go. That's what I've learned about abundance, because after I had that conversation, it was clarity for me. It was clarity for me. I understood loud and clear. It was like, oh, okay, so this confirmed how I've been feeling for quite some time, probably well over a year, maybe two. Sometimes you could feel a shift. Sometimes you could feel it. When you ask for clarity, when you ask for signs, pay attention, because you're getting those signs. And I want you to remember, life is not conspiring against you. Life wants the best for you. Life wants the best for you. You just need to make room. All right? And understand you are worth the effort, without question. And I say this to the people who do work hard, who work their asses off to be present just in life. You deserve to be poured back into. And the reason I know that is because there are people that do a lot less and they receive a lot more. Yes, some people want to feel like they're needed, but you can't necessarily wait on people to show up for you, because sometimes they won't. And that's unfortunate. But doesn't mean you don't deserve it. And that's what I've realized. I will always be taken care of. One, I'm going to take care of myself to the best of my ability. Two, there will be people that come along and decide to meet me where I am, just like I'm willing to meet them. And I stand on that. So whenever things are kind of falling by the wayside, that's always indication for me that I'm making room for what I deserve in this season or just life in general. So honor that. Honor the moments of scarcity, because that's indication this is no longer where you pour. And this is no longer where you grow either. All right? In any setting, because people are people regardless of the title that they hold in your life. Friend, family, I don't care who it is. If you notice that someone is making the same effort for someone else without them having to ask, but it feels like a task or the bare minimum you feel guilty for asking for, honor that. That's a relationship of scarcity, not abundance. And you deserve more than that. That's it. And that's all, guys. I hope you guys have an amazing week. If you want to become a Patreon supporter, I will be dropping a bonus episode for this episode in terms of how to work towards abundance, what that looks like practically. And just little things you can apply even while you were in moments of scarcity. And it's something that I've been doing, and it's been working. It's been working. So I will have that on the bonus content. And what else? If you've been rating the podcast, thank you so much. If you haven't, go to Spotify, go to iTunes, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and click the little stars. to rate the podcast. If you're on Apple, the stars are at the bottom of the podcast description, I believe, and Spotify is the same thing. Thank you for those who have done it. And if you want to become a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description of this episode. Become a Patreon. Patreon supporters get bonus content, extended episodes, and these little tidbits that I've been dropping. Just weekly reminders. Sometimes they're poems. They're just moments of thought, and just something to help you over the week hump, or just to take with you on your journey. So yes, all that's in the Patreon, and I think that's it. You could get your Bird Brain merch, and the book is still available. And yes, if you have purchased the book, the coloring book, and you dig it, do me a favor, leave a rating. Head over to Amazon, leave a rating, and or in Barnes and Nobles, wherever you got it from. And just tell the people what you like. All right? Please and thank you. And I think that's it, guys. I hope you guys have an amazing week. I hope you guys take care of yourselves. Shout out to my sister, because her birthday is this week. One of my favorite humans. One of the people that pour into me. Like I said, always has my back and best interest. And I'm always proud of her and rooting for her. And she deserves nothing less than that. Amazing human, hard worker, and a kick-ass. So, T, if you're listening to this, I love you. Happy birthday. And you guys, take care of yourselves. All right? And take care of each other. And take care of the spaces that you cultivate. All right? Take flight.